What's going on, good people? Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Build Your Fort podcast. I'm your host, Lentheus Chaney, and I wanted to come out and talk to you guys for a little bit about Build Your Fort podcast and what's in store for you. Look, I started this venture after I saw a need for people who were lost after being laid off or stuck in a rut, trying to figure out what they're going to do next. Back in 2017, I was laid off from my corporate job. I was there at that company for well over 20 years and just shy of a couple of years of retirement. And there I was, laid off with no more than 6 months of severance pay. One of the things that I found is that many of the people who had depended upon a particular job for their security were left out in the cold. They were very upset. They were disenfranchised, and they couldn't believe that a company that they had devoted so much time, so many years of their life to, would just let them go. And I was able to find this out because after being laid off, we were put together in a Facebook group. It's somewhat of a support group, something that we could use to help each other along in this process of getting to the next step. But what I found is that many of those people, they were just miserable and they were upset and they could not find their way out. I eventually had to leave that group because it was bringing me down, but I vowed that I would find a way to give back to other people who are stuck in the same situation. You know, we are all encouraged to follow our dreams, yet it rarely works out as we hope. Even if your dream job arrives, you may not be able to hold on to it. You know, stress will eat away at your health and your relationships, and it leaves us disillusioned and demotivated. So with Build Your Fort, I'm hoping that you all will come along with me with this journey and join me for candid conversations with entrepreneurs, trailblazers, and innovators as we discuss how they find purpose working on something that they love. You know, these extraordinary people are finding their way to success in a world that does not define worth just by a paycheck. And that's the number one thing that I found, that living a life just for a paycheck is not going to end up always a happy life. You've got to love what it is that you do. And that's how I came up with Build Your Fort. When I was in the transition of finding out what I was going to do next, I did make the decision that I didn't want to go back to corporate America again. I made the decision that no more would I be reliant upon another company or individual to define my success and make the decisions as to whether I succeed or not. So I wanted to do it on my own. Now, although throughout the years I've always been an entrepreneur, but I was still holding down a 9-to-5 job at the same time. And for many people, that's very difficult. It was for me. And I ended up taking all of the money that I had saving up and working for, and I was throwing it into my businesses. And at some point I decided that I had to let that go. And I had to take a step back, I should say, and redefine my happiness. And that's what I've done with Build Your Fort. And how I got back to my happy place was, I tell this story a lot to people, that the way that I found what it is that my purpose is and how I was going to be able to survive in this world that, again, defines happiness as a paycheck, I had to really figure out that happiness is success. Money and things aren't necessarily success, but happiness is success. And if you're happy with what you do, the money will come. So one of the things that I did was I became debt free. This was a process before I got laid off. And I believe it was divine intervention that I had started that process, 2 years prior. So one of the things I did is I sold my BMW. I shut down my business. I began to save money. And next thing I know, 2 years later, I was laid off, but I was in a good place financially because I didn't have all of the outflows and the overhead that I had while I was working a corporate job, because all that money was going to bills into my business. And so eliminating all that gave me grace and gave me space to be able to take a moment and figure out what it is that I was going to do next. Now, I'm not saying that was an easy practice or easy process, because quite frankly, I found myself laying in bed for about 3 or 4 weeks, drinking tequila and, making my way through it. But eventually I got up and I figured it out. And so I'm here to help you figure it out as well. So one of the things that I did was I went back to my happy place as a kid. And I believe that's where happiness many times resides for people. Do you remember when you were a kid and people will ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And kids have the most wonderful dreams about what they want to be, whether it be superhero, train conductor, a builder, whatever it may be. They have the biggest dreams and they don't have anything deterring them from going for it. But then life happens and they grow up, and sometimes we veer away from that happy space that we found as a kid. My happy space was building a fort in my backyard. So the story goes is that as I was growing up, we needed more space, and my mother decided that we were going to add on to the house. She wanted a bigger dining room and a bigger kitchen, and she found a way, single mother working hard. She found a way to come up with the money to add on to this house. So what was left were bricks and cinder blocks and wood and things that were left after the construction. So being an only kid, you sometimes have to figure out how you're going to entertain yourself. And I remember, that happy feeling I had was, what, I'm going to go out in the backyard and I'm going to build a fort. So I took those bricks and I took that wood and I found some old carpet, and I could just remember that being one of the happiest moments in my life is I was able to build something, a shelter. And then those same ideas did float in and out of my head as I reached adulthood. And I would always marvel at the fact that people would build something and charge other people to either live in them or rent from them or house their business in them. And that's how I became a realtor. I knew that I wanted to be able to own property, manage property, help people buy property. And that's what I do. And I love it. But now I want to spread that word with you and spread that knowledge with you and tell the stories of other people who are doing the same thing. They found a way to do the work that they love. So throughout this podcast, you're going to hear tips, stories, tricks, ideas, things that you can do to help you move along, or just some inspiration. Many of you may be out there have already found your way, and I'm happy to hear that. But if you haven't and you want to get a little bit of inspiration, we're here for you. So thank you so much again for tuning into my space to Build Your Fort podcast. I look forward to sharing more stories with you and bringing some phenomenal entrepreneurs along the way to share their story as well. So until next time, have an amazing day. And I look forward to seeing you, or I look forward to you listening to me next time. All right. Have a good one.